Hello everyone, and welcome to Series 6 of The Amateur Gardener. In this series, I'll be talking about garden maintenance and harvesting your vegetables in your garden as they are ready to be picked from their plant or their vine. Garden maintenance is going to include mostly information about watering, how often to water, what time of the day to water, what kind of watering you would like to do for your garden. And then harvesting, I'm going to select about 5 or 6 different vegetables and talk about how to harvest them from their plant. This is the 6th series of 7, so it's our second last one, and I hope you enjoy it. Well, you've built your garden, ensuring you have the best possible soil, planned the vegetables you want to grow, planted them using a companion gardening guide, and now you're watching them grow. During their growing cycle, and each plant's cycle varies, you now need to provide them with everything they need to reach their full potential. Yes, garden maintenance. And this includes watering your garden, weeding the garden so the plants are not competing for nutrients, staking the taller plants, fertilizing to support soil nutrients for plants to absorb, and checking for pests so you can alleviate any issues before they get out of control. Sounds like a lot of work, but there are ways you can tackle this work to be able to enjoy your garden. Mulching will help keep weeding to a minimum. Grass clippings are an excellent mulch choice, so now you've taken care of what to do with your clippings. Staking doesn't take too long, and I combine fertilizing with my nightly ritual of checking the moisture levels and watering, almost daily, depending on what Mother Nature has already provided. And you can check for pests while you stake, weed, fertilize, and water. Let's talk about watering your garden. Watering is a necessary task that you'll be involved with daily. However, there are irrigation options to make this task as simple as possible, and some that won't require you to be present at all, for those folks who plan on taking vacation but do not want to sacrifice their crops. Watering cans are a great way to water as they help you feel connected to your garden. Every time you water, it's an opportunity to check on the plants, and you're likely to notice very early if there's a problem of any kind, like with pests that needs addressing. If you're watering with a watering can, it's important that you don't just dump the water onto your crops. A heavy flow of water can damage the plants and dislodge the soil around the roots. Many watering cans have attachments that release the water in a rain-like fashion, which reduces the force of the water and helps prevent possible damage. You may recall when I was setting up my gardens, I took into consideration the distance of the gardens to my watering sources. If you've done the same, chances are you're not going to be hauling a watering can to a garden that is some distance from the watering source. Watering cans are best used for container gardens or gardens closest to your watering source. For gardens located further away, you will definitely want to consider using a hose, and if you have planned well, your hose should reach to the area you need to water. If not, there's the option of adding a hose extension. When watering with a hose, you will want to purchase a good nozzle to use that has a couple of spray patterns. The stream of water coming out of a hose is even more powerful than the stream coming out of your watering can, which means that it's important that you don't damage your plants or dislodge your soil when watering them. Choose a nozzle that has a couple of options for spray patterns. This will allow you to select a gentle pattern for watering and quickly switch to a more forceful stream for washing down your tools. The nozzle of my hose recently broke, and so I'm now using my thumb over the end of the hose to deflect the full force. When watering, remember that plants take up water from their roots, so the water should be directed to the ground, not on the plants, as best as possible. Too much water on the leaves of plants can cause problems like fungal diseases, and the droplets can act as magnifying glasses in the sunlight, burning spots into the leaves. Sometimes it's unavoidable to keep water off the foliage. The point is, if you aim it at the ground, you're reducing the amount of water that will land on the foliage, thereby preventing other problems with the plants. I use a hose for the majority of my watering, but both watering can and hose use for watering is time-consuming. Yes, there are other options, and I thought I would mention a few. Sprinklers are another good option. Here's some things to keep in mind when watering with a sprinkler. Always try to water in the morning. Watering during the day could leave water droplets on the plant's foliage, which we now know can cause the plant to burn in the afternoon sun. Watering in the evening might result in the water not evaporating until morning, which increases the likelihood of fungal problems for your crops. These same watering tips hold true for watering with a hose or a watering can, but with those options, you'll have a little more control so that you can water the ground and not the foliage. Drip irrigation systems, or micro-watering, is a series of small hoses, pipes, or tubes that have small holes in them that slowly release water. You can buy drip irrigation kits at many garden centers. Connect the tubes together to create a network that's unique to your garden and allows you to place the holes right at the base of your plants, ensuring that each plant's roots are getting enough water. A drip irrigation system can be very involved to put together. However, in the long run, it's a time saver, and it's an ideal option should you be away on vacation. Items that you'll need to go along with your system is a timer, a backflow preventer, which does exactly what it sounds like, a pressure regulator to ensure the system has enough but not too much water pressure, a small filter that stops objects from entering the irrigation system, and an adapter to adjust for the size of the tubing. Check the kit you purchase to see if it comes with all these items first before you run to the store to buy them. I've never used a drip irrigation system, but I think I'm going to investigate them more for next season, especially if I'm taking vacation. Finally, soaker hoses are another great watering option. They follow the same idea as the drip irrigation method, except that they're covered in tiny holes that allow small amounts of water out. You'll have less control over where the water is released with a soaker hose than other forms of drip irrigation, but they're also easier to install. You can run a regular hose from the faucet to the garden and then connect it to the soaker hose so that water isn't wasted leaking from the soaker hose before it reaches the garden. You can bury the soaker hose just below the surface of the soil, or you can put it beneath the mulch to stop the water from evaporating off of the hose and ensure that more of it gets into the soil. This will also prevent the sun from weakening the soaker hose. How do you know if your plants have enough water? If your plants aren't getting enough water, one of the first signs will be that they start to wilt. But before you reach for the hose, check the soil to see if it's moist. Remember, a quick soil check is to put your finger into the soil. If you can feel dampness at the tip of your finger, then there's enough water there for a half to a full day. I usually do this after a rain or if the weather wasn't particularly hot that day. If the plants look otherwise content and the soil is damp, I'll skip watering and check them again in the next 12 hours. If your soil is very dry and the plants are wilting, then of course you will water. But if your plants are in wet soil and they're still wilting, you may be overwatering. This is a very common mistake for beginning gardeners. So step away from the garden and put down the hose. Give your plants a chance to catch up by absorbing the water sitting there as they need it. And hopefully Mother Nature evaporates some of it so your roots don't rot. Watering is a fine balance, but you'll catch on. After having a reasonably successful growing season in my raised gardens, I'm now faced with plants that are thriving and producing lots of vegetables. I have multiple tomato and zucchini plants, and my beans and peppers are coming along as well. I have harvested one zucchini so far and some beans. I've also been enjoying arugula, kale, leafy lettuce, and mustard. As I wait for my other vegetables to grow and mature, it occurred to me that I should read up on harvesting these vegetables and how to store and enjoy them later. The focus of my harvest information is tomatoes, zucchini, beans, peppers, and leafy greens. Tomatoes emit ethylene gas, which is produced by fully formed, mature green tomatoes. The ethylene increases the red and yellow colors and decreases the green color. Because of this process, tomatoes are one of the only vegetables which can be picked before it is completely ripened. Harvest time for tomatoes should ideally occur when the fruit is a mature green and then allowed to ripen off the vine. This prevents splitting or bruising. Generally, the end of a tomato growing season is usually late summer. There is a fine line when picking tomatoes at the mature green stage. Look for the first light blush of color as an indicator of when to pick tomatoes. You can also harvest tomato fruit when it is ripe. These vine-ripened tomatoes may be the sweetest, but some types of tomatoes are too heavy to vine ripen, which is why it's important to pick the tomatoes at their mature green stage and allow the ethylene gas to continue the ripening process. How do you pick the fruit? Lightly squeeze the fruit to test for firmness. Look for the tomatoes with the first bloom of red appearing on the skin. Grasp the fruit firmly but gently and pull from the plant by holding the stem with one hand and the fruit with the other, breaking the stalk just above the calyx that has formed to protect the bud. Once you've harvested the tomatoes, store them indoors to continue to ripen. Green tomatoes will ripen faster if wrapped in newsprint, which will contain the ethylene gas and hasten the process. Zucchini grows on a bushy, non-vining plant with large, dark green leaves peppered with silvery gray streaks. These large leaves provide shade to the fruit, but also tend to play hide and seek with it. Generally, when picking zucchini plants, you're looking for smaller, tender fruits that are sweet and mild. Ideally, zucchini squash harvesting will commence when you have fruit that is 6 to 8 inches long. If you pick often, fruit production will increase. If you find that you're drowning in more zucchini than can be reasonably used, leave a few fruit on the plant to slow down production. Fruit should also be dark green or yellow or white depending upon the variety and firm. Cut the fruit from the plant at the stem. With its broad leaves, zucchini fruit can be difficult to spot, so be sure to check under the leaves for hidden fruit. Now that you've harvested the fruit, how do you store it? Store unwashed zucchini in a perforated or open plastic bag for up to a week, or freeze the fruit for use later down the road. I know my sister-in-law loves to make zucchini relish, and some folks love to make loaves of zucchini bread. The truth is, a successful zucchini harvest means you'll be very busy in the kitchen finding ways to make the best use of these fresh vegetables. Sweet peppers are often harvested when the fruit is still green, but full-sized. Allowing the bell pepper to remain on the plant and continue to ripen, changing colors from yellow to orange to red before picking pepper fruit, will result in sweeter peppers. To harvest sweet peppers, you have to take care because the delicate branches will break if you tug at them. Use hand pruner's scissors or a sharp knife to remove the pepper from the plant. Pepper plants after harvest can be stored in the refrigerator for 7 to 10 days. Make them into salsas, add them to soups or salads, roast them, stuff them, dry them, or pickle them. You can also wash, cut, and freeze peppers for future use. Once the pepper plant has been harvested, in most areas it is finished for the season and the plant will die back during the late fall. Most leafy greens take very little time to mature and can be eaten at most any stage of their development. They can be harvested whenever there's enough of the crop to make it worthwhile picking. Most greens are cool season veggies that are planted in the spring for an early summer harvest. Some of them, like spinach, can be planted again late in the summer for a fall harvest as well. Kale can be picked even later. A leafy green harvest may consist of different types of lettuce, kale, cabbage, beet greens, or collards. Leafy green lettuces can be picked as microgreens when the leaves are tiny. They will be milder in flavor than when the leaves are mature, but simply delicious. I cut the greens as close to the bottom of the stem as possible, and I take them from one area of the plant, leaving the others to continue to grow. I wish I had known the tip about saving seeds for planting later in the season, so I could have fresh greens all summer long. I will certainly be ready to do this next season. After some weeks have passed, you'll begin to see blooms on your green bean plants. From those blooms, green bean pods will blossom. The pods are a vibrant green color, therefore they hide easily on the plants. Make sure you look carefully at each plant when searching for your beans. One trick is to move the plant around to where you can see the bottom of the green bean plant. Many beans will produce there and you'll have a greater chance of finding more beans on each plant. If you have a large garden with multiple green bean plants, it's easy to overlook them. Try your best to be as thorough as possible when examining the plants for green bean pods. The last tip for harvesting green beans is to watch them closely and regularly. Green beans are better when picked young. They're more tender and have a better flavor. However, some people like beans referred to as Shelleys. These beans are the ones with the harder pods and larger seeds inside. I hope you enjoy harvesting all those wonderful vegetables from your garden. So far, I'm lucky enough to have had beans, zucchini, and leafy greens. And I'm looking forward to my tomatoes as they ripen, become red, and I can start to enjoy some great toasted tomato sandwiches and do some canning for my sauces in the winter. Take care.